Welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl. Join your host, her inner circle, and expert guests weekly for chats about dating, secure attachment, the solo lifestyle, doing relationships differently, and of course, sex. And here's your host, Janice Formichella.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's so good to speak to your ears, I suppose. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in. Thank you to everyone who has been supporting the transition of the podcast. And yeah, thanks for being here. The support means a whole lot. And the support of this lovely lady here, Jessie Maree, from Auckland, New Zealand, has been fundamental. Is that a good word for it? As I've
I guess
done
so. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this. I know we've spoken about it.
I don't know who suggested this first, but we decided quite a while ago that we wanted to do an episode on different types of relationships, different types of relationship structures, and we are here to do it. I think that this is very appropriate to do as one of our first episodes because part of the point of this podcast is thinking outside of the box, exploring new things, looking at other options, ways of doing things. And I think when it comes to relationship structures, that thinking outside the box, exploring different things is a great way to learn about yourself. I think that when you have other types of relationships on tap,
On tap. Yep.
You can also have more of your desires and needs met and connect with people in different ways.
Yes. And I love having gone on this journey and through the relationship structures in the last few years for me, it's so important that people know that there are other options out there, and regardless of what structure that they're drawn to, all of them will need open, honest communication. And it's huge on trust and boundaries, regardless if you're monogamous all the way through to relationship anarchist, right? These things only work with communication and boundaries and trust.
I agree. And I guess when they don't work, that would be exactly the reason why.
Yes.
Let's, get into it. This is going to be fun. It was fun pulling all of these together. Oh, I will tell everyone, today we are going to be talking about 5 different types of relationship structures. This is not at all any type of inclusive list. We chose ones that we thought were of interest to us. We chose ones that we thought were fun.
I would say also relatively, probably the ones you've most commonly heard of as well, right?
Yeah. That is true. Yes, I would definitely say it was not hard to come up with this list, but we are going to be coming back soon and doing a really cool episode on types of non-monogamy. So we will touch on those, but we're going to go hella deep in the next episode that we do on this. So yes, stay tuned. If we mention something that you're curious about, don't worry, because we'll probably come back to it in the next episode. Of course, hit us up on Instagram if you have a question about a type of relationship you'd like us to cover.
Yes.
Let's do it. So the first relationship structure that we are going to talk about is monogamy / exclusive in all senses of the word, I suppose, for most people.
I guess, yeah, you're exclusively with one person, right? That's the choice you've made, and that's where you start.
Well, and that's why we even have the term emotional affair, because when it comes to monogamy, you're meant to share that just with one person. Of course, we will also say that monogamy is favored, prioritized. It is the default in most societies, at least Western societies.
Well, I would say Western.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know of examples of others?
I'm currently reading some stuff for the course that I'm doing, and it's actually of reading through same-sex relationships and stuff. So a lot of tribes and stuff, monogamy is not the thing, and also same-sex, different sex relationships is also not a norm. So when we speak to monogamous, I think it's a lot to do with Western cultures and from what I know, it was due to like land ownership is when monogamy became a big thing.
Gotcha. All right. Well, maybe that could be a topic for yet another
Yeah.
episode, the history of this social construct. And it certainly is a more recent history. I pulled something cool from a BetterHelp article, and it says monogamy. How is it defined? This is cool. And this will, I think, convince some people that this really is something that is a social construct that we're raised with. But despite what many think, it is not come from nature. The article says monogamy is uncommon among most other mammals, with 3 to 5% engaging in strictly monogamous relationships with a mate of the opposite sex. And in fact, the article says, humans are no outlier. Less than 20% of cultures exhibit strictly monogamous behavior. Many more present a mix where monogamy is just one common structure among several. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's the case in America. At least I don't think that that's what a lot of people believe.
Yeah, and that's, I suppose it's become something that people are challenging more and more these days, but that wasn't always common. So it doesn't surprise me that like those percentages are relatively low. I mean, we're not anti-monogamy, right?
No, not at all.
It doesn't, I mean, I've been in monogamous relationships, you've been in monogamous relationships. Yes. It's not something that aligns with who we are and what we're up to in the world, right?
Yeah.
I guess that ties in. So there's this one term called serial monogamist, which I love and relate to because I used to be, right? That was my type of monogamy. And it's basically like, it's like a serial monogamist feels most comfortable in a committed relationship. And they often have a series of monogamous relationships and don't typically take breaks between relationships to be single or to casually date, which I did for ages. And usually, like when a serial monogamist ends a relationship to move on to another one, it's because they wanted to try something new or they had feelings for someone else, but they've been told, that they need to end their current relationship because monogamy is the only way, right? And so like for me, I used to be that. Like I used to have someone waiting in the wings, or I used to like date. And I think the longest period of time before I started exploring non-monogamy, I think I was single for maybe a couple of weeks.
That is so fascinating, knowing you so well. Also, it's just the absolute opposite for me. So I find that so interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It's just something because I didn't know, right? I'd have feelings for other people and then be like, but society says, how, and it was often that like, if you love, and if you have feelings for someone else, does that mean you really like that other person that you're with?
Or, yeah.
Yeah. So I struggled with that, which is, I think, which often leads, I think serial monogamy starts to lead into looking at other ways of being or other ways of relating to people.
Sure. Because I think with serial monogamy, it's not just that you prefer monogamy, but you prefer to be in partnership.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. And that is one reason that non-monogamy does work for so many people. You are in sometimes multiple relationships and having multiple needs met.
Yes.
But again, going back to the fact that I have no agenda here as far as
totally
one thing or another. Monogamy works very well, obviously, for a lot of people. It also obviously doesn't work for a lot of people. Otherwise.
Yeah, 100%. And like, it's not like we're saying, ooh, monogamy, like
no,
doesn't work for us, and that's totally fine. And I know plenty of people that it works for. I know plenty of people who have been happily married for like 20 years or like, and that's totally cool also.
My experience is a little bit different. I am absolutely not a serial monogamist, a serial any type of relationship ever since. Oh, and I will point out, I was actually married and with the same person for 7 years in a strictly exclusive monogamous relationship. I did find out after we got divorced, though, that I'm actually happy or just as happy on my own. I would kind of consider myself definitely, well, I don't know. I keep on going back and forth about what type of poly I am. Perhaps solo poly, in that the relationship escalator doesn't interest me, but I think also single at heart, maybe, because I'm just as happy being single. I think single is great, as anyone who's been following me totally knows. And I've even been in monogamous relationships recently. I was with someone last year for, I don't know, 6 or 7 months. He said that he wanted to be non-monogamous, which pleased me. But I quickly discovered that was not the case at all.
Right. Yeah.
We both have experience with monogamy. In fact, I will say also, for the longest time, a few years at least, I was kind of like I could do either. And we're going to talk about why that is. I don't feel the same anymore. But
I don't think I could do monogamy anymore. But like, what I love about what I'm exploring in terms of relationship, again, loving being single, loving just having me and connecting with people how I feel works for both of us. Again, like I said at the beginning, open, honest communication, right? And setting boundaries and having trust. And maybe there is a period of time where I'm only seeing one person. Doesn't mean I'm monogamous, though.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
yes,
mean?
absolutely the same. I'm seeing someone who has multiple partners right now. I do not, and that is cool. I'm enjoying building the relationship with him.
Totally. So I guess that then leads us into our second relationship structure that we'll discuss. And this one, we again in that second episode, or like the second part, we'll get way deeper into. But is polyamorous relationships. So this is the practice of engaging in multiple long-term, committed, romantic, and often sexual relationships with the consent of all people involved. And like I said, we'll get into this further, but there are types of relationship styles, which are hierarchical, non-hierarchical, polyfidelity. You could be solo poly, which is what Janice is sort of identifying with at the moment, monopolyam, and then you've got polycules or polywebs, which is just like, or constellations. There's so many ways that people define them. And I think it's interesting to have an open conversation about it, because like everyone's opinion is different, everyone's thoughts are different, and I think as long as you can communicate what your expectations are and what you're looking for, and everyone is happy, then like you can move through the different types if you want to.
That's absolutely right. And I think it's fun to find out, what works for you, what works for your partners, what works for your lovers. And I will point out, because there are so many ways of doing this, I think that some individuals who are not experienced or haven't been exposed to non-monogamy may think that it's this like radical, crazy lifestyle with people who are way on the fringes. And while that is definitely the case in some regards. There's people who have elaborate alternative lifestyles, regardless of what relationship structure they are drawn to. And you know what? It's also common folk who just happen to do 100%. Things differently.
Yeah. And I love people who are like, oh, it just means you're having lots of sex with everybody. I'm like, mate, I've got like a scheduling kink, I swear, because like trying to fit people in and like schedule around my life, being like, self-employed, it's not all like, and sex happens for sure, because like, don't we all want that? Exactly. But it's not like these raging, like, we're just going to go fuck everyone we want to. Like, that's not how that works.
Well, and along those lines, as far as misconceptions go, I would want to definitely touch on that I do think that sometimes people who choose, I guess, get a bad rap or are misunderstood, especially non-monogamous men. And that does bum me out a lot, because there's such decent men who practice this. In fact, if you're a man who can attentively handle multiple women, I find that very, very impressive. But I do often hear either stereotypes or quite negative things said about men who choose this. And it's just absolutely not the case. People do have asked me also, what's the difference between polyamory and just dating a bunch of people? And that's another misconception.
Oh, 100%.
Just because you're poly doesn't mean the relationships are not extremely committed.
Yeah, and that's the difference, right? Polyamorous relationships are committed, long-term romantic relationships, whether you're having sex or not. That's what that means. Whereas like, and that falls under the umbrella of non-monogamy, which could be casual dating, multiple people at a time. That doesn't mean you have a long-term related committed, you're just getting to know that person, right? Like,
So, Jess, I would love to hear a little bit about how you entered the lifestyle. You've been non-monogamous ever since I've known you. You had been for quite a while. And I do happen to know that, as you said earlier, it's not an option for you. So how did you arrive here? I mean, you just said that you had been monogamous previously. So how did you get to the point where you're, just as non-monogamous as you can be?
So it was about like, I think I started to become aware. So like always have had this feeling of like, how can I like more than one person at a time, right? Like everything else tells you that if you don't, if you like someone else, it means you don't like the person that you're with. And I struggled with that for a long time. I ended up, like I said, being a serial monogamous. I always had one in the wings, or I was moving on, or like, so it's like, there has to be something. So, and then about 10 years ago, I found a community, the kink community, which has a lot of non-monogamous humans in it and people playing outside of their relationship, right? And like starting to see that sexual or non-sexual people are doing different things together, and then starting to realize that polyamorous or non-monogamous humans are a thing. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm totally here for this. And and again, I was still in a monogamous relationship. Even when I figured that out, I was still in monogamous relationships for, I was 23, and I think I was 27, 28 when I decided I was done with monogamy. So like I still was in monogamous relationships that period of time. And
I've heard of this before, where people are in relationships but kind of have it in the back of their head that they will slowly either get more into the kink community if the relationship comes to an end, or in the poly community.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what happened for me is my partner and I at the time, we had different ideas about what we wanted for life. He wanted marriage, he wanted kids, he wanted that lifestyle of the wife and the picket fence and the stuff, and didn't want to travel that much. And my life was not that. I've always wanted to travel. I've never wanted to be committed in terms of like that sort of way. I've never wanted to be married. I've never wanted kids. It's just not my lifestyle. No, thank you. So that we just fundamentally had a difference in what we wanted. And so it got to a point where I think, it must have been 27, 28. I said to him, maybe when I turn 30, we can try for kids.
Wow.
Compromise, right? And then like a month or so later, I was like, I can't do that. I can't. I'm sorry. Because I'd been thinking about it, right? And I was like, I can't do that to you, to him or to me. I can't then at 30 be like, oh, I guess I said I would, so I've got to, and not want children, right? So I said to him a couple months later, I was like, this isn't going to work. Like, I just don't want children. In my gut, I know I don't. And so we ended up breaking up, and it was really nice. It was my first really lovely experience with a breakup. Like, it was the first time it wasn't a toxic relationship ending, which was way more heartbreaking because like you want to like, hate the person. It's easy to get over them.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically after that, after we broke up, I was like, I am never, ever being monogamous again. And so
I'm done. I'm out.
I'm done. So then I just like sort of fooled around and, had my little slut era, which I still liked it. I'm still there's nothing wrong with being a slut. I love
hell yeah
people.
Slut power.
Blood power. And then I met this guy. I put all of my profiles, all my dating profiles, I said I'm non-monogamous, right? Like so if people were connecting with me, they knew that.
You were all in.
Oh, I had to be, because I'm not going to beat around the bush, right? Like I don't want to like not lie to you, but like I don't want to be like, oh yeah, start seeing this person and then be like, oh, by the way.
I would highly discourage anyone from doing that. It has led me to some very uncomfortable and frustrating and even painful experiences.
Exactly.
Trying to go into dating someone who was monogamous and kind of putting it out there. I that's not the way to go about it. I assure you.
and that was why I basically was like, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. And then I met a guy, and we I moved in with him shortly after we started dating, purely because he was supposed to have a shoulder surgery, and I was like, well, I'll move in so I can help you.
Okay.
And then we went into lockdown with COVID. So yeah, it was a time.
Yeah, thank you so much for filling us in on that. I have a couple considerations when it comes to choosing polyamory, and that would be, in my experience, I would say for people to keep in mind that I believe that it takes a lot of time and effort to find other non-monogamous individuals. So I would say I did not meet hardly anyone at all when I moved to Denver. I happened to meet my current partner, which praise the Lord that I did. But I would say it's a commitment. What do you think?
Even if you were monogamous, still trying to find that person that you want to spend the rest of your life with is you kiss a lot of frogs.
Sure. I meet a lot of people in real life or in person. And I guess for me, I didn't meet.
But again, like when you start dating non-monogamous, because it's not a norm, the dating pool becomes smaller. That's why it's a lot harder, I reckon, because it's just not as generalized or like not the normal way of being.
Yeah.
But again, communication and boundaries are essential. And the big thing that people say to me are like, don't you just get jealous? And I'm like, yes, I do get jealous. Just because I'm non-monogamous doesn't mean I don't get jealous. You get jealous in monogamous relationships. The thing is, the jealousy is not the root emotion. It's not the core issue. It's a need, or not so much a need, but it's something not being met, right? It's like, oh, I'm jealous that he's going and doing that with her because you wanted to do that with him, or you think that she's spending too much time with her other girlfriend, because you can feel that with friendships.
Yeah, absolutely. You face your jealousy, you deconstruct your jealousy, you face it head on. I like to say that when it comes to non-monogamy and specifically jealousy, that it helps to smooth out, the rough edges of maybe your insecurities or your personality. And I mean, if you can confront jealousy, I think it makes you a bigger person.
Oh yeah, and that's regardless of what relationship style you're in, right? Or structure. And that's nice. I guess it moves into another structure, which is living together apart.
Yay!
Which I don't have. Like, I've got a little bit of experience, but not this way. So, like, I'll let you talk to it.
So I don't have experience with this, but I guess we'll get a little bit into that in a minute. I just find this freaking fascinating. I think that this is an absolutely wonderful trend. Living apart together refers to couples who are in an intimate relationship but choose to live separately for various reasons. They usually do climb the relationship escalator to a point, but don't consider living together to be part of the escalator. So we'll talk about some of the reasons, but like I said, I just find this a great trend. It would definitely work for me. I have been trying actually pretty actively to find someone who's an expert in living apart together or has extensive experience with it, because I'd really like to do a full episode on it. It wouldn't be at all, I don't think, even appropriate for us to do it because we're not experts and haven't done it.
No.
So anyone out there, please get in touch if you want to come on the show and talk about it. And if you haven't heard of this before, I will let you know that this is something that is on the rise. I found a Script News article about, I don't know if they took this from the census or what, but the article said between 2000 and 2022, the percentage of married people living separately, these people are married.
Yeah, they do.
It's so cool. It grew by more than 40%. The latest US Census shows the figure spiked in 2022 to roughly 3.89 American married adults living apart. Let's talk about why some couples may choose it. First of all, and I'm really in favor of this, a lot of couples, a lot of individuals don't want to complicate things, such as signing a lease, one of them moving, maybe giving up an apartment you really love or a neighborhood you really love. That makes total sense. Please, anyone out there in a newish relationship, think long and hard, or don't do it at all when it comes to moving in together. recently some horror stories when it comes to
Mm.
people wanting to break up or move away from each other after. Just think it through. And
Yep.
of course, you might be great partners, but just find that once you live together, it just stops
Oh,
working.
that could be like your daily routines and stuff. Because sometimes shift work is that's another really good way of thinking about it. Like maybe you work during the day and your partner works nights, like, and that just doesn't work for you guys to come and go. So it's just easier to live in your own spaces and then come together and make that time intentional, right?
Oh, yes, I think that's great. So, also, I want to say that not seeing your spouse every other second can make the relationship stronger. You may end up desiring those times that you get to hang out and spend quality time with each other. And when you have time to yourself, yeah, I think you'll appreciate
Yeah,
it more.
exactly. You don't take them for granted, right? Like you're like, oh, you're there, so we're just watching TV together, or we're just doing this together,
Yeah.
or like, and it just becomes day to day, and then you start to get bored in the relationship, and then start to resent it. And I reckon that's probably like, if you're monogamous, that's essentially where affairs start, right? Because you're bored of the status
True.
quo.
Yeah.
So maybe being monogamous, but living like apart is a way for you to move forward so that you can both get what you
Mhm.
need and that your time together is
Is
intentional.
really valuable and rich.
Yeah, I think that's a great way. And also, like, I definitely love living, like, I like my own bed and I like my own space, and I really don't want to have to, like, compromise that anymore. So I
Sure.
get that.
I understand that as well.
Mm.
Having your own place is so much fun.
Oh.
And also when it comes, like we said, having the time together really valuable and rich. I
Mm.
think something that also hinders a monogamous, especially relationship, is just stress of life.
Oh,
And when you're
100%.
bringing that home, both of you every day, that does cause a lot of conflicts. I am
100%.
reading a great book, everyone. It's called Conscious Loving by some authors I bet a lot of you will be familiar with, and that's the Hendricks, Gay and Kathleen. And I am loving this. The tagline is The Journey to Co-Commitment, a way to be fully together without giving up yourself. And they highly
Ooh.
advocate for time alone and for even
Mm.
taking days away, take going somewhere before you go home after
Mm.
work. And in one of the chapters, it says making space, taking space. And they say to allow a co-committed relationship to grow and flourish, you must take space for yourself and make space for your partner. It must be
Mm.
absolutely all right for you to take time off from closeness to allow yourself to integrate and to prepare for moving to the next higher level of intimacy. You also need to let it be all right for your partner to take space for the same reasons. Think of it
Mm.
as resting from a particularly energetic jitterbug, that's a tongue twister, before going back on the dance floor.
I love that. And I
Yes.
love that because and like it's conscious, right? You're consciously making these choices. You're not
Mhm.
just defaulting and you're not just going through the motions on
Yeah.
autopilot. Like you're consciously working on that relationship together. And what's that saying? Distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? So
I don't
like,
think there's anything wrong with that.
yeah.
And yes, going through the motions. Also, we can talk about this in another episode, but when you're going through the motions, you've been together a long time, you're living
Mm,
together, that is also when the sex starts to suffer. And that is
exactly.
not what you want. And it doesn't have to be that way either.
No. And if you want to live with your partner, cool.
Yes.
I would just, again, I would just make sure that that's a conscious choice, right? Like, don't just do it because that's what's expected of you due to society. If you want to live with your partner, do that, but be conscious about it and maybe look at ways that you can bring space to the relationship, right?
Well, and I will say the Hendricks in this book are speaking to monogamous married couples, and they
Yeah.
are suggesting this. So I think that they may be onto something. And I'm really on
Mm.
fire about this, and it's a fire that's just smoldering underneath. So
I love
again, I
that.
would love to explore it more. It just makes me so excited to think that this is becoming more a thing. I
Mm.
and partially because as far as my experience goes, I don't have experience living this way, but I will say that I'd be highly open to it. I'd really,
Mm.
really don't see myself living with anyone again. I guess never say never, but I
and
cannot see.
and like I said, if I lived with someone, I would want my own room. I'd want my own
Hell
space.
yes.
I would want, like I sleep better alone. I think it's proven that we all sleep better alone because you're
It has,
also
yeah.
co-regulating with someone else's sleeping habits.
Yeah.
Again, if you're shift working or like just what you date a snorer and you're a light sleeper, just doesn't work, Doesn't mean you can't share, like, come, have sleepovers. Isn't that cute though? Isn't that a cute way of looking at it?
That is actually really cute. That's how my partner and I refer to it.
Yeah, they're having a little sleepover. It's adorable.
Yeah. All right. Living apart together. That is
Yeah.
another option. You do not have to get to the point where, oh, the relationship has gotten so serious. We need to move in now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that moves us on to the next one,
Yay.
which friends with benefits or erotic friendships. I love this. I love these. I think they're fantastic. So
I
what
really
they are,
like, thank you for putting out their erotic friendships. I did some content on friends with benefits recently, and I didn't use that term. Fucking love it. Go Jess.
Oh, my friend told me, so when I was talking about this with her yesterday, she was like, oh yeah, erotic friendships. And I was like, that is definitely a way of putting it, right? Like,
oh, yes.
So this situationship often arises when like two people want to take their friendship like to the next level, right? With casual consensual sex. And there's like often there's no romantic component. It's just like your friends and you want to have some sexy times and that works. Again, boundaries. And setting expectations, and because it's easy to get feelings for a friend, right? Because you're like, well, I like them as a friend, so why doesn't this go further? So it's about communicating your boundaries and the container in which this exists. Otherwise, it can become messy, right?
Definitely. And when it comes to boundaries and a container, you need to remember, especially with this relationship structure, you have to have boundaries with yourself. And really honest about whether or not this is right for you or whether or not this is right with this particular person. And yeah, have a good conversation with yourself before you dive in.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you're having sex with them every time you hang out either, right? It's like, for me personally, I feel like the friendship is the base of that. And it makes me really sad when I've had these happen and then people get weird. Like I've had friendships and then we've started sleeping together and then they've gotten weird and thought that I wanted more. I've gotten weird and had started having feelings for someone.
Yeah.
And then taken away the sexual part. But often taking away the sexual part, my experience with this is men just sort of are like, oh, we should just be friends, and then disappear. And that breaks my heart more because I value that friendship. I don't like the sex is sex and it's awesome and stuff, but I value as a friend. I value you in my life, and disappearing like that hurts way more.
I think just that you are a super communicator and a highly evolved, and sadly, a lot of people just aren't comfortable with difficult conversations. I think that you should practice and get to the point where you are. And so I'd actually commend you on that for being able not just to have the conversations, but to redefine relationships so that they work for everyone. It's a skill that not everyone has. I'm sorry that that's been your experience.
Many a tear. But I've got someone in my life who I met beginning of last year, and him and I like had this real intense 2 weeks of like always seeing each other, always fucking. Like I had like a past life experience with this human. It was weird. He as a human being is a really interesting human being, and I really love and adore him, and he's been there for me. And he started to show me what healthy encounters with men can be like. And like they actually can be communicative and they can say what they're up to. And like, so we then de-escalated it more to just friends with benefits. And then he messaged me not long ago when I was moving this year, actually the day I was moving, so it wasn't great timing. And he messaged me and he was like, hey, the friends with benefits thing, like having sex is messing with my mental health. Can we just be friends? And I was like, totally. I had a reaction to that in terms of I'm used to that happening and then them disappearing. And I had to say that to him. I sort of was like, yeah, totally. And then I said some stuff and then I was like, hold on a minute. And then I rang him and was like, look, this is what's going on for me. I just need you to know, like, what I'm afraid of is I don't care about not having sex. I'm afraid of losing the friendship. And
Wow.
he was like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, and to follow through with that, like we continuously check in with each other.
Mhm.
So,
I love that. And again,
you
going back
know,
to the check-ins, nice work and nice work to this guy
yeah,
for being
honestly,
able to handle it.
oh, yeah, helped start like showing me healthy communication in terms of that sort of level of men.
Yeah, I love it. And there are lots of benefits to this. Maybe you're
Mm,
not ready for an actual relationship, but you'd like
yeah.
intimacy in your life. I think that that can, yeah, definitely work. And
Mm,
also, maybe you do have other relationships and are having sex with other people, but this is just one other connection that will allow you to connect
yeah,
with more people.
totally. Yeah.
And as far as this being a valid relationship structure, which I do want to let people know, it absolutely is. This might serve a lot of your needs and desires. One of the questions I get a lot is if it actually works. And this is valid.
Mm,
It works for a lot of people. I did an episode. One of the last episodes I did on the other podcast was
mm,
called Friends with Benefits. Everyone go check it out. It's episode 192. It was with a friend of mine who is solo polyamorous and had extensive experience with friends and benefits. Absolutely loves it. Has multiple friends with benefits today. I really, really highly recommend it if you either are curious about this,
mm.
think it might rock or float your boat. I found an article called Friends with Benefits and Psychological Well-Being from Science Direct. Love Google Scholar. Okay. I shared this on the episode, so forgive me if anyone's already listened to that. But the research does show that people are happy. The article says men, as well as women, reported that their emotional reactions were more positive than negative. The most frequent was happy at 47%, followed by desired. Oh, yeah, who doesn't want that? 41%. Satisfied. I love that for friends with benefits, 40%,
Mm.
and excited and confused, which oddly they not only lumped together but put as positive. Yeah, but that is excited and confused, 26.9%.
Mm.
We then have adventurer.
Oh, what a way to put
Yeah,
that.
at 26%, maybe
Hmm.
diving into something you're not sure of what the outcome will be. And
Mm,
then after this, the percentages just absolutely plummeted when it came to negative experiences with friends and
mm,
benefits. 7.6% reported feeling deceived. 5.9% reported feeling used.
mm.
And lastly, this is what I wanted you to see, Jess. And lastly, empty and clumsy.
Clumsy?
Yes.
Uh,
When I read this on the original episode, we were laughing so hard. Not really sure what the criteria is for clumsy in this case, but 4.2% rated or reported feeling that way.
I just see it like a picture in my head of like friends trying to have sex and like it
Right.
being like
Okay.
awkward and like clumsy and falling over each other and like having a really awkward experience.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
just
And we
think
also
it's
roasted the movie Friends with Benefits. And I guess it was a little, I mean, that movie was
oh well
fucking
they turn it
stupid,
into a
but
relationship, right? Like
that
that's
movie was so bad. I can't, and yeah, that's another
rom-coms.
episode. Go back and listen to 193. Me and two of my friends just tore the hell out of that movie. It's hilarious. Highly recommend that. As for negative emotional reactions, men showed a higher level than women,
It's
except
because
for confused, where
I mean
women showed a higher percentage than
this is
men.
the thing, right? It's because men think women want relationships when really they're the ones that want relationships and they're
Oh,
just too afraid to
gotcha.
be committed, right? I'm making a generalization. I obviously have
That is, but
no
that could
research on
again
that.
another episode to explore
Yeah,
the
yeah.
choose me culture.
Yeah.
So, Jess, you just said that you've had lots of friends with benefits experiences and relationships.
Yeah, recently, like, so when my last sort of like committed, I guess, nesting partner and I separated, I've sort of been solo since then.
I love
And
watching that,
oh,
by the way.
I've loved going through it.
For the first while that we were together, you were with said person and living with them. And you had told me so much about how even in non-monogamy, you have gone in from relationship to relationship kind of continuously.
Yeah. And I had I had a girlfriend and I had my nesting partner who was male. And then I had another, I had a couple of different relationships there. And so once I separated, so like all of those sort of fell apart around the same time. It was sort of after all my radiation stuff, I guess, life. But since then, I've sort of just been exploring. I've had got some friends that we've had orgies together, like a group of us. And it's like a group that we all know and are committed to each other, And so it's like whatever happens at the orgy stays at the orgy. We don't really interact outside of that, like in terms of sexual behavior.
Gotcha. Okay, I get it.
We're friends. We hang out all the time. So I've done something like that. I've also had friends like that I do fuck occasionally. And it's not all the time though, right? Like we hang out and do other things. And then sometimes it's like, hey, what you up to? But and they come and go. And like, I don't have any, and the same with the friendships, like, I'm also in this era of like, if you don't put the same effort in that I do, then I'm just going to stop.
Yeah, I'm starting to have more, I guess, rules or agreements with myself when it comes to friends and how much I put into them. But conversation, I suppose.
So unfortunately, some of those have fallen off because like I was the one initiating. I was the one, even just with the friendship, not the sex, just the friendship. And so I've just sort of like given them the same level of energy. And so it's dropped away. And it's sad, but it's like, well, I'm not going to keep chasing. I'm not going to feel used. It's a big one. So I'm just going to give you the same energy. Or communicating that with them, right? And being like, hey, where's our friendship at? Like, what level of communication do you need? I'm okay with like changing that. It doesn't need to be, we don't need to talk every day. Like but like just redefining it and like because sometimes it can get awkward, like if you've been a friend and then you start having sex, it can kind of sometimes get awkward and maybe they don't want to hang out with you as much because they think maybe it means sex every time and it's like no. So it's just communicating and checking in.
And as for me, I had a friends with benefits situation when I was in Melbourne. I got a lot out of it. I'm still in touch with this person today. I think it was a little bit of a missed opportunity in a way because we did not communicate like explicitly about what was going on. And I kind of wish that we would have. But, thankfully, we're still in each other's lives. And I mean, had lots of fun with them, lots of great experiences. Yeah. Other than that, though, very limited experience with friends with benefits. And that's why I appreciate having people on who have done it for years and have gotten a lot out of it and navigated it. So thank you.
It's fun.
We have talked about monogamy, polyamory, living apart together, friends with benefits, and our fifth relationship structure that we are going to talk about is an interesting one, and that is open relationships.
Jess? So an open relationship is typically a monogamous relationship, like romantic relationship, but the couple are open to sexual encounters either together or separately or both. Often this can be swingers. This could be don't ask, don't tell can also kind of fall into that one sometimes, right? But basically it's under the non-monogamy umbrella sort of because you're not sexually exclusive. You're romantically exclusive and you do not have romantic relations with these other people, but you have sexual experiences. That's why often swingers clubs exist, right? Or like couple swapping or that kind of stuff. So that also means that there's veto power there and couples privilege.
Absolutely,
so often,
there is, and I will tell a story about that.
Oh God. And often like that's when unicorns sort of fall into it, right? Because they say that they're open, but really they're like just want to fuck someone and mess them around, and then they can veto or like couple, and that doesn't happen always, but like couples privilege comes in and it's like, well, actually we're doing this thing and you're just a third.
Can you please explain for the audience what a unicorn is?
A unicorn is
some things, and we're assuming some things, but
a unicorn is something that doesn't exist. It's a mythical creature that doesn't exist, right? So
I disagree. I preferred being a unicorn when I was having when I
No,
was
so
doing
but there's a difference. So like you choosing to be that is very different to people who unicorn hunt and aren't doing it ethically. Are
Sure.
just doing, you know what I mean? Like if you want to be a third, cool, go be a third. That's awesome. I've done that. We've like a partner and I have like had a third, you know, except I've approached it differently. I haven't called couples privilege. That's the difference with like when people talk about unicorns, it's when the couple usually use veto power or couples privilege, whereas like otherwise it's a triad or a quad.
Yeah,
When
and
all
I will
three
say
are
in my experience, I wasn't really looking to have relationships with these people. It was more of a sex thing for me.
like if you're happy just wanting to go and fuck a couple, fucking awesome. Like
Yeah.
do that. But know that like don't get your emotions involved, I think. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, that's
Um,
exactly what I did. And the couple had been looking for a third. I thought it
yeah.
was absolutely great. There are a lot of politics involved, a lot of
Oh yeah.
mixed complications. And I mean, this could absolutely be an entire episode. I have had experience with this, not in my relationships being open, but in me being involved with someone,
Mm,
multiple people who were.
hmm
And I mean, I was even involved with this guy in Melbourne for probably a couple years who was in an open relationship. And when we
Oh, right. So
met,
he was in an open relationship and you were
yes.
seeing, okay, cool.
And when we met, we really connected and he asked me out or he asked me to hang out. Okay.
hmm
And then he did get in touch and just said, this is the situation. I'm in an open relationship. I see other people. She does not.
My first question there would be like, does she know that you're seeing other people?
Yeah, because we did start hanging out. We did engage sexually. In fact, he even had a kid with this woman who he had been seeing. And I think that he probably crossed some of the lines as far as what they had agreed to. He
Mm,
did start texting me quite a bit, asking me to get together, definitely more than I was comfortable or interested in.
mm.
He definitely caught feels because he was texting me, like I said, a lot. And I didn't think that much of it. I wasn't having the same feelings, I can assure you. And then one day he came to me with this long ass text saying that his partner had become really uncomfortable by how much time he was spending on the
hmm
phone with me and texting me. And I was like, okay, I don't really care.
I know, but imagine
But
if you did care and she vetoed that. That's what I mean by like veto power or
yeah,
couples
well, I mean, she
privilege.
had veto power with this because
Mm,
we were just texting. I mean, it's not like we were sexting or anything. And yeah, she said she didn't like it and she exercised that authority. And yes, I wasn't very upset about it. It did kind of prompt me to I just definitely wasn't as interested. I was kind of turned
mm,
off by it because I had never asked him to text me in the first place. So the way that he
mm,
approached me, it was just like really serious and this big thing that he thought I needed
mm.
to know. And yeah, I was less, I didn't want to hang out as much. And so when he would ask me to hang out, I would kind of say no. And eventually he did come to me and say, like, what's the deal? And I full out said I was just kind of turned off by that.
Mm.
And then he thought that that was because I was upset that he was going to text me less. And I'm like, mate, no, I just don't need
Yeah,
this
right.
drama.
Like I just want the fucking drama in my life, right? Like I ain't got
Mhm.
time for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where open relating it can be interesting, right? Like I've got friends that are swingers and she's currently not sleeping with anyone else, but he is. But like but it's very much just sleeping with. It's not, there's no like hanging out really. Like if it's hanging out, it's pre having sex. It's like,
Oh yeah, it
hey, how
was
you
definitely in my
doing? You know, like
case.
it wasn't like we're going to hang out and be friends because then that shifts to friends with benefits, right? In an open relating relationship, which I'm pretty sure would not be okay because there's maybe not romantic feelings involved, but there's that already established like connection with your friend. So, and that's just
And
like how I see it, and I'm happy to be wrong, but like that's why I would say opens more like swingers or like going and doing pickup play and
Or when you travel, I know that that's an agreement that a lot of
Like if you,
couples have, is you're
yeah,
at liberty to have hookups or engage
yeah,
sexually.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
why when you're out of town, which I have to say I could probably get down with that.
Oh, totally. If I would be like, yeah. And so I've my experience with this is, so that last monogamous partner that I was with, I was struggling with some health issues, namely vulvodynia. So that's a chronic pain condition of the vulva, right? So having sex was painful. And so we weren't having sex. And so I said to him, like, if you need to go and have sex, like, go and do it. I just ask that you don't do it with like someone that we both know, you know, go
Totally
and pay
fair.
so escorts are legal here in New Zealand. So go and pay an escort. Go and have sex with someone, like get on Tinder and just for a hookup or some shit. Like, I don't care.
Mhm.
Like not that I don't care. Like, I love this human enough that I want him to be able to have sex. And it was something I couldn't provide at that time. So that's a reason that I wouldn't say we were open. I just suggested it. He never wanted to because he didn't feel comfortable doing it. Because I think for him, sex is intimacy,
Yeah.
not something to just release as a release. Whereas
Well,
I
and
was
that's
like,
something to definitely keep in mind about
mm,
this is that you do have to compartmentalize a bit.
yeah,
I mean, that might not be how everyone sees it if this is something that you
totally.
feel comes naturally. But yeah, for a lot of people, that sex without intimacy or emotional connection is just simply not an option. I have found for me that I've gone in that direction.
Yeah,
Before,
same.
I didn't feel that way at all. I had hookups. I loved doing it. Now I can't really see it. I like to have
Yeah,
sex with people I'm connected with.
connecting. Yeah, same. Yeah, same. No, I definitely prefer that now. Um, but it's a way of doing it, right? Like, I guess, and same, like maybe you have a higher sex drive than your partner, and maybe that's a way that you guys can like work out the relationship so that both partners are happy.
And I've heard of a lot of couples who have quote unquote opened up the relationship. That
Mm,
is highly complicated. And again, if anyone out there has experience with that, I'd love to do an episode on it. I
yeah,
have heard of cases where they did that and the relationship was strengthened. So
yeah,
it
I would.
is extremely possible.
Yeah. And I think with any of these like open, non-monogamous stuff, if you're going from a monogamous relationship to open or trying polyamory or whatever because your relationship is failing, it's like having a child or getting married. It doesn't work.
It takes a lot of effort. I mean, I
Yeah,
have known of it.
if you guys are fundamentally already not good and then
Oh,
you
gotcha.
open,
It's to
yeah,
fix it. Uh-huh.
to try and using it as a fix is not going to work. Like
I think if
it
you're
is.
not getting along and you think opening it up will help with that, absolutely not. I think when it's sexual concerns
Oh
that
no,
it
like
could,
that's what I mean. Like, but if you guys are strong as a unit, right, and you're
yes, okay,
communicating
yeah.
well and like everything's good and you're not just like arguing all the time, and it's say something like whatever reason you want to open, both of you have to agree to it. It can't be a like, oh well, we try this or we break up because it's going to lead to breakup. You're going to hurt other people in the process, particularly if you try polyamory or not like non-monogamy. I suppose if you're opening up just to have sex with other people, less feelings will get hurt, but don't don't do that to other people either, just because your relationship is failing,
Good
is probably
point.
the
And
one thing
that's
I have to
also
say about
where,
that.
and that goes back to the communication. I
Mm,
did hurt someone that's on my mind specifically when I was first
mm,
learning about polyamory because I hadn't been open and not something I would do today, but definitely have regrets about that. And you know
yeah.
what? This is all a learning curve, and that is because we are not raised to think that there are so many options. And while I wouldn't say that's necessarily okay, I would say experiment, give yourself grace, and know that these are skills that you will have to commit to learning. And once you
Mm,
do, yay! It is so
yeah.
much fun
Yeah.
to not have the rigidity. And again,
Mm,
if monogamy is for you, that's great. I still think though, thinking outside of the box will help you.
mm,
You know, maybe being open to being friends with someone who's non monogamous. And along those lines, I will say for me recently, I started seeing someone, it was the most serious relationship that I'd had that a lot of my friends are seeing me in. And I also, from what I gathered, not everyone knew that I was non-monogamous. And so there were not only a lot of questions about it, which I didn't mind at all, but there was just a lack of not just understanding, but happiness for me, and people acting as though it was a casual thing and not a committed relationship. This was so much fun, Jess. I love having you on, and we're gonna be seeing you all the time.
All of the time. I know I sang that. Welcome.
All right. And soon we will be dropping a second episode, just types of polyamory, types of non-monogamy.
Yeah.
And I think that this might be very eye-opening to my listeners who aren't familiar with this lifestyle, because there's been an increased interest in defining and labeling different ways that people are doing things. It's fun. I don't like the rigidity that sometimes comes when we insist on labeling things. However, these are personal choices that people are making as far as how they're going to show up for themselves and their partners.
As humans, we like to put things in boxes, right? And having a label means is a box that we can understand something through. So it's trying to work that out, but also not being like, well, the box is this, and that's how it stays. It's kind of like, well, this box is a little bit more fluid, but this is what it means generally.
I'm sitting here with a big smile on my face. I'm happy about my life right now. I'm happy that I've recommitted to this lifestyle. I'm happy for the change in the podcast. I'm happy to have this babe in front of me.
Yay.
And, the life is good. If anyone wants support in any of this, I have some brand new coaching packages available. If you're interested in non-monogamy and want to explore maybe how to get more comfortable with it, especially when it comes to jealousy and self-soothing, I have a coaching program on becoming more securely attached. Yeah, hit me up. Jess, where would you like to have people come and hang out with you?
I'm mostly active on Instagram. It's Jessie Maree Co, I think.
Oh, I'm linking in the show notes.
Yes, and my website is jessiemaree.com. I'm looking to start doing some coaching packages around, non-monogamy, kink, and sex. So, like, if you've got any questions or want to get to know more, that's where you'll find me.
And also let us know if there's an episode topic that you'd like us to dive into. We're going balls to the wall.
Balls to the wall.
Yeah,
we ain't here to fuck
do it.
spiders, as we say this end of the world.
Oh my God. Okay, can you please say that again? I tell people about this all of the time. No one believes me, and everyone thinks it's hilarious. So, Jess, what did you just say?
I just said we're not here to fuck spiders. So it's an Australian colloquialism. It's an Australian saying, and it basically means we're not here to fuck around. We're here to get shit done. So yeah,
absolutely. We are not here to fuck spiders. Let us know what you want to talk about, and we'll see you next week for more. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Sex and the Solo Girl with Janice Formichella, the podcast for those who want to add more flavor to their relationships with themselves and others. If you liked today's episode, make sure to head over to Instagram and let her know. See you next week.